Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY weekend here aboard good old Athena. Truth be told, I am slightly apprehensive about this weekend. It is going to get crazy hot here inside this oven that some would refer to as a shed. Especially up here, right underneath the roof. Now the forecast calls for temperatures around 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit, but that's outside, and up here it is gonna get boiling hot, so I will be riding the struggle bus for sure. This weekend I was planning on patching up the holes I've got here in the cockpit, but if it gets too warm for me to do that, well, then I've got plenty of other stuff on my to-do list. Earlier this week I had a wisdom tooth removed at the dentist. Later that night I put that tooth underneath my pillow, and then next morning I woke up with a sore neck. Apparently the tooth fairy has started handing out tools instead of cash. Ta-da! A Makita belt sander 9031. I first saw this tool on Andy's channel, Boatworks Today, and ever since then I've been lusting after one of these. And then finally, last week, I finally managed to pile up enough bad excuses to go ahead and purchase one. Real quick, there are 3 reasons why I decided to pick up one of these 9031s. The first one is dust management. As you might be able to see, there are boats on either side of Athena here in the shed, so I want to keep my dustiness to an absolute minimum. Looking at Andy's video, it looked like holding up a vacuum to the end of the belt sander was a great solution. My second reason for picking up this bad boy is the fact that I think it'll be able to get into some tight corners that would otherwise have meant a lot of hand sanding. My third and final reason is right here. I've got a fair bit of stainless steel I need to polish. I have no idea if this thing is good at polishing stainless steel, but in a few months we'll find out. Due to the fact that I am already drenched in sweat, I think I'll postpone giving you guys a short demo of this thing sanding fiberglass until early tomorrow morning when it's a little cooler. At least in my mind, there is a direct correlation between how sweaty you are and how itchy it is to sand fiberglass. I don't know if it's something I'm making up, but if you've got an opinion, let me know down in the comment section. As far as this afternoon, why don't we find something a little less itchy to do? Like, for instance, removing this old hatch. It looks like at some point there was a bigger hatch mounted here and someone filled in the old holes with some gel coat. Now, it would be insane for me not to properly fix this before painting the boat. And I mean, it is just one tiny little hatch. How difficult could this possibly be to remove? Ugh. Oh, look, someone put in a little bit of extra effort here. That is certainly worth at least 3 spiffiness points. That was the last of the screws, so now there is just a small matter of whatever sealant or adhesive is hiding underneath here. These two we'll get back to in a few weeks. What I wanted to show you were these. Normally I use the flexible attachment from Bosch for my Bosch oscillating multi-tool, but this time my tool pusher was out. Fortunately, with the Starlock system, you've got tons of options to choose from, so yeah, I figured I'd give these a try. Aw, I'm sorry, buddy. I know, orange is a horrible color. Huh. The ones I normally use from Bosch, I don't remember them leaving behind whatever this discoloration here is. For me, it doesn't matter because I'm gonna paint all of this, but yeah. Ta-da! Oh, look at this. That is the same stuff that's inside the rudder. That stuff that was referred to as dough. I think it's a mixture of polyester and sand. Wow. They've got that stuff on the aft end and the forward end. But then on the 2 sides, there is nothing in there. There's just a bit of wood wedged in there. That's kind of curious. Obviously, it's not a structural issue. It's just kind of funny that they chose 2 different methods. I wonder what the reasoning was behind that. In case I win the lottery, let's just go ahead and grab some measurements here. 51 by 51 centimeters. The old hatch is okay, I could go ahead and reuse that, but it would also be kind of cool to get a new hatch that matched the 3 hatches forward. Those 3 hatches right there. I'm pretty sure Vitas makes a 51 by 51, but I'll check tonight. Good morning, guys. It is early Saturday morning. I figured I'd get a nice and early start this morning before it starts getting really hot in here. Without any further ado, let's get to the sanding. Let's just go ahead and switch out this 100 grit with something a little bit more efficient. Like, for instance, this 40 grit paper. I forgot to take care of a few little nicks up here on the cabin top last weekend when I took care of all the other holes, so let's start with this one. So far, I am pretty pleased with this thing. For smaller areas like the little holes here, this thing is surprisingly efficient. Last weekend, I epoxied a small piece of laminate in place here to use as a backing plate for laying up laminate to fix this hole here. Now, the epoxy is fully cured, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and sand the edges to make everything nice and smooth. Nice, that turned out silky smooth. It's gonna be very easy for me to lay up glass here without any kind of sharp edges. So far, I like this thing for the small little detailed stuff. It's very quick at that, but let's give it a go at something a little bigger. Oh, that sweet, sweet fiberglass itch, but at least I am almost done beveling the edges here. But I realized something. When I go ahead and patch that hole, I want to take care of this area down here at the same time. And then while doing that area, I kind of want to get the cockpit locker in place at the same time. I'm going to glass this in place rather than relying on screws and sealant. The reason being, I'm going to cover the cockpit in teak or some kind of synthetic alternative, and I don't want to have leaky gaps trapped underneath that. For me to be able to glass this in place, the first thing I need to do is to put some kind of support underneath here. A little bit of trimming, and this should do a nice job. I've fiddled around with this a little bit, so let's see how it fits. That should do nicely. Now let's get this sealed up. I'm going to apply a few coats of unthickened epoxy to this because once this is adhered in place, there are some areas I won't be able to access. And that means if I want to seal this, well then I have to do it now. I've thickened up the little bit of epoxy I had left over because I figured I could use it to fill some of these little low spots here. There we go. A little bit later, I can go ahead and lay up some glass on top of that. Last weekend, when I laid up a little bit of laminate to act as a backing plate for the hole from the shore power connector, I also laid up 2 slightly larger pieces. I'm sure most of you have guessed it already. These are going to get used for the 2 slightly larger holes. Now, I do need to trim them a little bit, but that shouldn't be an issue. So if I go 37 by 30 centimeters, that should be a good size. Because I've got access to the back of this hole, there are tons of options I could have gone with instead of laying up a bit of laminate. I could have used a piece of plywood wrapped in some plastic. I could even have beveled both sides. But yeah, this is a nice and easy solution. After a little bit of fiddling around with this, I think I have reached something that is acceptable, something like that. Just in case you're wondering, yes, it is pretty freaking hot in here by now, but let's forge ahead. I've test fitted everything and I've used a little bit of leftover epoxy from brushing a second coat on that piece of plywood to wet out the surfaces here. Now let's go ahead and mix up some thickened epoxy and get these adhered in place. If you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you'll know that I like using plastic bags to pipe out thickened epoxy. Well, to try something new, I've picked up 100 of these official piping bags here, and I gotta say, they are very convenient. And yet again, I don't have a notched trowel when I wish I had one, so I'll just have to improvise a little bit. And just like that, everything is nice and secured. I'm going to clean up the squeeze out, but other than that, I'm just gonna leave this as is until tomorrow. Even though it is sweltering hot in here, there are still a couple of things I want to take care of before calling it quits. The first thing is to get all of these little holes I sanded earlier today patched up. That way, at least in my mind, there is less of a chance that I will miss a hole. I am very uncomfortable in this heat, but on the plus side, it is very easy to wet out this fiberglass when the viscosity of the epoxy is this low. Okay, all the holes up on deck are now patched. I only have 3 little areas where I need to do some core replacement left, but I think I'm gonna wait until tomorrow to do that. However, there is one last thing I want to take care of today. And that is to get that little piece of plywood reinforcement adhered in place. I've got a couple of coats of unthickened epoxy on the plywood, so now it's just a matter of wetting out both of these surfaces and then screwing this thing in place with some thickened epoxy. And that is very close to being my last job of the day. Yeah, no, that's it. I was playing around with the idea of starting to work on this thing, but it's just too hot for me in here. So I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Good morning, guys. It is Sunday morning. According to the weather forecast, it is also going to get sweltering hot today, so let's hurry up and get some work in before that happens. Yesterday, before heading home, I checked the temperature on the surfaces here aboard the boat, and they were around 40 degrees Celsius. That is very warm, and I'm going to hold off on laying up laminate here in the cockpit until it's a little cooler. But we can still go ahead and get rid of the strings I used to temporarily secure the backing plates. Yep, they are on there. That is perfect. We can also go ahead and back out the screws that I've temporarily used to secure this little piece of plywood. Fingers crossed, this thing still fits. That's perfect. As far as glassing this thing in, it's going to be fairly easy along these 2 edges here because those joints are going to get hidden by the teak or the synthetic alternative. But there are, however, some edges up here that are going to be visible. Everything here is kind of flexible, so for this to last, I'm going to have to add some glass. But I also want this to look good, and I haven't fully decided on how I'm going to add that glass, but I'll figure that out. So now that I'm not going to be laying up glass in the cockpit today to patch those holes, what am I going to do? Well, I've still got a little bit of work to take care of here on the cabin top. If you guys recall, when I removed these doohickeys here, which is what the main sheet attaches to, I found some cracks here on the cabin top. These cracks right here, and they're formed because the coring material in here is balsa. And while balsa is a great lightweight coring material, it doesn't do great with clamping. Some plywood in here would be a lot better. I don't want to replace a ton of core here. There's no reason to do that. Basically, I just want to make sure that this is all within my little plywood circle. And it looks like that size would be a good fit. Of course, if I find a ton of rut down there, I'm gonna have to expand that circle a bit, but let's hope I don't. Unfortunately, I don't have a hole saw that's big enough. That would have made life a lot easier, but I think I'm gonna give this a go and then just sneak up on the pencil line with my router. While Athena was still outside, I filled these holes here with some epoxy to protect the core from rainwater. And that is probably going to bite me in the behind now, but let's just go ahead and give it a go. There is a little bit of rut there, but it also looks like it's a small area, so that's good. So the good news is there is absolutely nothing wrong with the core in here. That is awesome. It turns out there is already a bit of plywood reinforcement here on top of a bulkhead, so I've decided not to go further in than that. The slightly annoying news is that I've put a little bit of a dent in my circle here. I was sneaking up on the line, everything was perfect, and then I was distracted for a split second, and now I've got that. Now that doesn't matter at all, I'll just fill that in, but yeah, it's there. I think my newest toy here is going to come in very handy for sanding the inside surface here. And there we go. This is ready for new core. And it looks like a 12mm piece of plywood is what I'm gonna need. Well, it turns out I don't have any 12mm plywood here aboard the boat, but I do have a ton of scrap 6mm. Yep. That seems like a pretty nice fit. And oh, I could claim that my little notch here was so that I could remove these after dry fitting them, but of course that wasn't intended. Now there's just a small matter of repeating that process over there. As far as that hole, I haven't decided yet if I'm gonna put in a new fan. I think I'll figure that out tonight. By fan, I mean one of these solar doodads. The one I have aboard Obelix is pretty miserable, meaning it doesn't work in Denmark during the winter. This thing, I thought I saw this running last winter, so maybe there are some better ones out there. But yeah, what do you guys think? Should I put in one of these here, or should I just close up this hole? That fan is going to be located in the aft head, but when I expand the aft head, so is this port light here, and that opens. So I don't really know if I need that fan, but what do you guys think? Look at this, more healthy core. Perhaps I should pick up one of those lottery tickets on the way home. After having replaced the core in the entire deck last summer, it is very uplifting not to have to deal with the cabin tub also. Anywho, I've cut the two little pieces of core for this hole over here, and that means I'm ready to epoxy in the core in both of those holes. But it's too warm for me to do that today, so instead of doing that, let's do something else. I've been rummaging through the boat for about an hour searching for this little guy. Now, we'll get back to this in just a few seconds, but as a byproduct of this guy hiding really well, I've managed to dig out all of the old deck hardware. Some of this stuff is going to get reused because there's nothing wrong with it. Other stuff is broken and definitely needs to be replaced. And then there is the windlass. It's working, but it is kind of corroded, especially here underneath the gear housing. It's very pitted. I believe this is a Lowfrance Tigris windlass, and I know you can get a new gear housing for those. So perhaps I should just pick up a new gear housing and rebuild the windlass instead of buying a new one. But that is also on my to-do list to figure out tonight. Of course, I don't really need a windlass right now, seeing as the boat is up on the hard, but I do need to know the outline of this and where to drill the holes for it before I start applying Kiwi grip. Let's get back to this little guy. As you can see, it's kind of a modern take on a gooseneck. But before I start mounting this on the deck, I want to make absolutely sure that the cables I've got in my mast will actually fit in through here. Depending on your location, they might be called either gooseneck or swan neck, but either way, let's go take a look at Athena's mast. This is where Athena's mast have been relaxing for a couple of years now. Hopefully it won't be too long until I can get it back on the boat. This is the bundle of cables I'll have to fit inside of this thing. Okay, so everything fits through the hole. That's a great start. Now let's see if it also fits out through the openings. Yep, that looks like it's gonna work. The reason I think this thing might be awesome is because unlike with a gooseneck or swan neck, there's nowhere for feet to trip or lines to get hung up. And it does seem like a very simple design. There's just this shell here, and then there's the bottom part with a raised little collet here where the wires go down through, and that'll keep water out of the boat. Or at least, I hope so. There were some instructions included, but well, this is pretty self-explanatory. I picked this thing up about 2 years ago because I thought it was kind of a neat design, but I have absolutely no idea if it's any good. But yeah, anywho, there's a drawing where you can see how it's supposed to be installed. It is way too hot for me to continue working, so I'm gonna call it quits and end this video here, and then I'm gonna spend the rest of today back aboard Obelix where it's a little bit cooler, trying to figure out what to do about the remaining deck hardware. But yeah. Hopefully next weekend it won't be as warm. That would be awesome. That way I can show you guys some more progress. But yeah, that is going to be it for this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!